But here we are again. Good to see you all. We're going to go right back into my favorite text, perhaps yours too, or it's growing on you, the Avamtasaka Sutra of Marty. Master Sure and I have committed ourselves to translating and lecturing this for the entirety of our life since we started in the early 70s, 1970s. So we've been doing it. I'm sure it goes a lot faster than I do, so you want to get into a faster tempo. I think he's doing it Saturday or Sunday night? Saturday night. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Okay. I don't have to repeat that, do I? Good. Any event, there's not many places in the world right now that this text is being opened and explored, to some extent maybe explained. I try to explain it the best I can, and I also try to bring forward the commentary and lectures that I was really privileged to pick up on with my teacher, Master Xuanhua, who lectured this from beginning to end, sometimes 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening. So that, I think, is almost entirely available right now. There may be sections that haven't been translated. And we do a version that consists of 40 chapters. Sometimes the last 2 chapters, of 39 and 40, are considered separate text, but in our version that we're using, we bundle them all together into 40 complete chapters. So we're on chapter 10 in the text called The Bodhisattvas Ask for or Seek Clarification. And tonight I'm going to finish up the last 2 verses of a verse section that we just went through. And I'm trying to figure out what pages those are. In my online version here, I have, it's page 7 and probably 8.
So you want to do chapter 10?
10.
Last time you were 9, so that's 10? Okay.
Whoa.
No, you were finishing.
No, we started 10 already.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. What is
I'm not the only one who's having memory lapses. This is good. Chapter 9 was light, luminous awakening, right? So chapter 10 of the Bodhisattvas Ask for Clarification, and we're into, well, let me look at this. Yeah, we're into page 7 or 8 already, so we've gone through, just to frame it for you who've been away for a while, Manjushri Bodhisattva is requesting of another Bodhisattva called Enlightened Leader or Awakened Leader Bodhisattva to answer or address a lot of questions. So Manjushri poses the questions. You're getting the text now. If you want to follow along with my little quick synopsis here, starting at the beginning, you'll see this is chapter 10, Bodhisattvas Ask for Clarification. You still don't have copies over here yet. That's okay. Okay, I will just continue. So Manjushri is asking for clarification. He's asking of an awakened leader bodhisattva. And the first section we went through, he was asking about why, given that there's such a unanimity of mind and nature among all beings, all people, all living beings besides people, why do we see so many distinctions, different kinds of rebirth, different kinds of faculties, distribution of strength, weakness, beauty, ugliness, different karma. People born in worlds where it's rich in blessings and the resources are plentiful and wholesome, and in other worlds, people in other realms within this world itself, people are born with where resources are depleted, lacking, deficient, and not enough water, there's not enough food, and so on and so forth. He's asking all about these and how does this work, and he's asking basically questions about karma. Then Enlightenment leader Bodhisattva answers, and those were the first first verses we went through up into the last two tonight. So if you look at those, I believe there's 10 in each section. So we've done 8 of that first section, and now we're going into the last 2 verses tonight. And then next week, we'll go on to the next section. By the way, this chapter is absolutely fascinating and compelling. It's really direct and straight, and it's addressing a lot of questions many of us have or will have as we go along in our practice. They're really existentially important and relevant questions. So if we look at where we are tonight, and I will just struggle through, say, the first verse in Chinese, and we'll do all 2 in English then. It starts as Ru Li Er Guang Cha Yi Che Jie Wu Xing Fa Yan Bu Si Yi Si Jian Fei Dian Dao. English translation, thus in accord with principle, observe that absolutely everything is without a nature. The Dharma eye is inconceivable. It's seen without distortion. The second part, and this finishes the verses, whether we name it real or unreal, ru shi, ru bu shi, or whether we say false or not false, ru wang, ru fei wang. Mundane and world transcending, shi jian, chu shi jian. These are merely false words. Dan you, jia yan shu. So let's look at that a little bit. If he says, in accord with principle, if we observe. Principle has lots of meaning. It's a very rich concept in not only Buddhism, but Taoism, Neo-Confucianism as well, and has slightly different meanings across those. That's I'm looking at it here. I believe it's a second character on your line if you got the Chinese. And that would be Ru Li, it's the Li. So matching up with, using principle to contemplate or to observe things. At first face, the principles are referring to the theories, the actual technical concepts that are found in these texts. But that's only the first layer. The character itself, if you look at its etymology, it has many sort of flavors or tones. Texture is one, like the texture of something, of a grain of wood, for example, or texture of jade. It also can mean inner essence, and then it also has a meaning of intrinsic order, or sometimes, especially Westerners like to translate it as logic, truth, reason, science, principle according to principle, and even extends into natural sciences. It's a term that's used, for example, for the Chinese for physics. What's physics in Chinese? Li Shi? Rui? Rui? Ruli? Yeah. What's the first one? Wu, Wu, Wu Li, Wu Li. That's it. Okay. So we're not necessarily talking about physics here. However, I'm going to make a point tonight that it's not adverse to a physics understanding of the way the universe is working, especially as we move from conventional physics to quantum physics. But that's a whole nother discussion. It can also mean, in terms of a verb, to polish jade. So it has a verb meaning too. It means to manage, to pay attention to handle, to put into order. So it can be used as a verb or a noun describing principles, order, or it can mean to put into order. So all of this, when you read the line here, if we use that, the text says, if we use that to observe, in accord with principle, we observe what? How everything is without a nature. So it's saying with principle, you see that everything was without a nature. If you're not using principle, you see all sorts of different things. So principle, maybe we render as patterns or coherence. And it also indicates something that we should, if we want to use the word should, follow or adhere to or use as a beacon or a pole star to take it to make sense of things. Someone once used it, and this is a pretty good translation, coherence or coherent patterns. So it's referring to structures, patterns, the way things are ordered in a natural, organic sense, but also in a deeper spiritual, philosophical sense. Now, this has to do with a whole way of coming at knowledge and understanding that involves not only using the principles to look at things, but to change the way we look at things. And so the principles change how we look at things, and then we look at the principles differently, and there's this interaction going on. But they're not to be taken as a matter of faith or just belief as abstract principles, but they're actually matter to hear the ideas, to use, to put into order, to use them. So it describes how these patterns exist, but can be optimally harmonized so as to make and foster the human good and your own life, your own cultivation. So they're both valuable and intelligible. So all of this is implied in this idea of Li. And it says, that's how one should observe, using that. So in a sense, one of the reasons for studying the sutras is to give yourself perhaps a different lens through which you observe, not only things around you, but your social relationships, and also your own inner life, your own psychology. And so it becomes both a mirror and a measuring stick. And it's not necessarily judgmental, but rather descriptive, precisely descriptive. My teacher once would use a phrase at the beginning, teaching us. He said, the phrase was, subdue yourself, return to principle. And what he meant by that is, don't let the ego and all of its attachments and afflictions be the lens through which you're looking at things. Subdue that. It doesn't say get rid of it. Subdue it. Return, and then return to the principle and let that. So how does one do that? And he basically called it klesha cleansing. So you get rid of all the, and here's the words you can use, defilements, pollutants, afflictions. This is klesha, or in Chinese, fa nao. So you cleanse those out. Greed, anger, stupidity, foolishness, doubt, pride, wrong views, irritation, restlessness. All of these very down-to-earth, really, psychological, physical, psychological tendencies that obstruct clear seeing. So when he said subdue yourself, it meant cleanse those kleshas, get rid of them, transform them, change them. And as you do that, principle starts to just naturally manifest. It's not something you have to go get, because it is already inherent. So when it says those patterns like the striations in wood or in jade, they're not added, they're there naturally. And all you're doing is bringing those out into absolute clarity. And so by them, in a sense, you have a compass. One way you can see this manifest is in the Vajra Sutra, which has this wonderful line. And I'm going off here. It says in the first part here, Guan. This is the Guan de Guan Shi Yin. So it says contemplate or observe through principle. And the Vajra Sutra says observe or contemplate this way. that all the conditioned phenomena that you will behold, inner and outer, are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, shadows, dewdrops, and flashes of lightning. They have no substantiality, no nature of their own. They're impermanent and fleeting. It doesn't say they don't exist, but they don't exist in a in a permanent, real way. This is this flux. So when that Vajra Sutra says, it goes right into the second line here, that absolutely everything is without a nature. So without a nature can sound negative, but actually it's positive. So without a nature means there's no self-existing self-being to anything. Everything is in conditioned relationship to something else. And this is the idea of condition co-arising, or the term pratitya samutpada. So because everything has no nature of its own, it still exists, but exists in changing relationships to each other. This is something we just observe in science. This is not necessarily Buddhist. It's actually the way science describes the working of things. Everything doesn't have a fixed nature of its own, but exists in relationship to a changing conditions of everything else. Now, why I say it's not negative is because that makes change possible. If everything were fixed and settled, then we would be fated and locked in, determined. Biologically, physically, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, politically, however you want to go, we would become fixed, static, not responsive, changing. And so it's sort of like the idea of impermanence too. Impermanence seems, everything's impermanent. But if we were permanent, we'd be really depressed. If there was no change to everything, we would become increasingly depressed and fatalistic. So the idea of impermanence and the idea without a nature means it opens, sometimes you use the word empty for that. But empty without a nature means open. It means open to infinite possibilities. So emptiness is not a negative term, but it's a creative, dynamic, opening term. We can change. We are changing right now as we sit here. Right? I mean, your body's changing as you sit here. I'm not the only one getting older as we sit here. As a verse they recite at night at the closing of the day is over, our lives are that much less, like fish in an evaporating pond. What joy is there in this? Yeah, that's a happy note to end their day on here, but it's an obvious, clear reflection. You don't have to be a Buddhist monk or nun to think, wow, another day's gone. What's going on here? I'm a little older, the evaporating water is going. Now you think, what's the evaporating water? It's your hair, your teeth, your skin, your blood, your vitality, your beauty. No matter how much makeup and what you put on, you're still less each day. So this idea of impermanence can seem like a negative thing, but actually it means that, again, with emptiness, there's this possibility of continuous change. We're not fixed or fated. So then what I'm suggesting here is some change is just happening inevitably in the process of things. We age, we're born, we age, we decline, we fade away. That seasons come and go in the same way. That's involuntary change. But what these principles, Li, is expressing, if you understand this, you can actually direct change. You can take charge of it, and you're not just the passive victim of change, but you're the agent of your own change. So using Li to contemplate here is talking about, understand these principles, karma, the four truths, the eightfold path. Use these to straighten out your life and, in a sense, straighten out your relationships and hopefully straighten out the nature of the way things are going in the world. So it's a really positive dynamic. The emptiness and impermanence is actually the catalyst possibilities for change. I think I won't say, I will say one more thing here. Li, some people take to be just the theoretical principles. And it is that, but it's not, it's actually an embodied understanding. And this is where I want to push the envelope. When it says guan, to observe, to contemplate, this is the same guan for Guanyin Bodhisattva in the Heart Sutra, when Guanyin Bodhisattva was practicing the perfection of wisdom, contemplating things really directly, really in a almost raw, unprettied way, looking at things as they really were. So it's talking not about disembodied dictionary understanding of principles, but rather something that is fully charged with your whole being. So when you use Li, you observe with Li, you're using it through your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, your body, and all your processes of thought. And it's not simply just an intellectual abstract exercise. At that point, this is what it means everything speaks to Dharma, because when you do it this way, all of the things of nature in the natural world, everything around you starts to reflect Li, principle, and you in turn are able to, with your cultivation, clarify and see the patterns, the coherent patterns that are existing, how this leads to that, and not this leads to not that, and so forth. So you actually gain a powerful compass, and by that compass you start to change your steps. You start to change the way you're walking. This is the meaning of shoshing. Shoshing, literally cultivation, but it means to change your steps. But without the patterns, without the coherent pattern, without the deep embodiment, taking it really seriously, not just on Friday night or Saturday night, but 24/7, even in your sleep, this starts to become a total powerful agency given to you to change who you are, how you think, what you say, and what you do, and correspondingly to alter your entire destiny. So these are not to be taken as abstractions, but really as embodied. So, if I could finish that passage, and then I'm going to come back to it anyhow. Then he says, the Dharma I is inconceivable. It's seen without distortion. So this is talking about if you are able to contemplate in this way, and if you're able basically to cleanse klesha, which means using precepts, forms of centering, equanimity of the mind, stability of the mind, which we call samadhi, and the resulting insight that occurs, that's the cultivation part of the contemplating principle. When that happens, the Dharma I, in other words, the understanding mind that sees things as they really are, inconceivable. Now, this can have a number of meanings. That's what the Chinese there is, I think, is the buke si, right? Right, inconceivable. It can mean wondrous beyond words. You know, like meow, wonderful beyond words. That's inconceivable, but it also can mean cannot be conceptualized and known indirectly via logic, surmise, intellectualization, and so forth. So to say it's inconceivable is really tricky, and that's what I meant by embodied. When this Dharma I starts to activate, it is no longer thought. It's faster than thought. And that's why they call it seen. It is understanding, but it's an understanding that's so quick and immediate that thought is too slow and too limited to capture all of its understanding. It's like a scene of karma is visceral, intellectual, emotional, and at the same time, and it's so fast and so clear and so complex that you can see it, but you can't put it into words. And when you put it into words, it starts to shrink down. So inconceivable doesn't mean it's not unattainable. It can be attained. So this is what it means when the wisdom eye opens. When the wisdom eye opens, it's not like intellect is over with. It just is a springboard into further understanding. So it doesn't crush the intellectual, but the intellectual can't go as fast and as wide and as deep as this seeing can. So you think that I'm making this up. I'm not making this up, but let me quote you to illustrate this, another passage from the Avatamsaka, the 10 Grounds. Where did the 10 grounds occur in the text? Anybody know? We got chapter 1, chapter 10. And chapter 39 is the Gandavyuha, entering the Dharma realm. Chapter 40 is the universal worthies, conduct, and vows. 10 grounds? Towards the end, right? Because you have the 10 transferences and so on and so forth. So I'm going to share this tonight because there's no way in my lifetime I'm going to get to the 10 grounds doing this. So we jump ahead a little bit. I'm being honest, right? If it's this long, like chapter 10, whoa. Okay, so this is one of my favorite passages from the 10 grounds chapter of the Avatamsaka, the Dasharvumi in Sanskrit, or Chinese it is. And this part of the text is going into, as you deepen your practice and as you deepen your cultivation, the very ground of understanding, the ground of your being becomes so expansive and so profound that you are as if you've ascended to a mountain and now you can see all around you 360 degrees, whereas before you could only see trails and forests and little streams and whatnot. Now you're up and you have this panoramic view. And this is called the Buddha state, omniscience, anyuttara samyak sambodhi. And this is how the text says, this Buddha state is born of wisdom. It is difficult to express, difficult to accept. It is not thought and leaves the path of the mind. The skandhas, the realms, and the places are not its gateway. And the wise know that intellect cannot reach it. Then the text goes on and says, like traces of a bird in an empty sky, so difficult to express, so hard to discern. This is expressing this inconceivable, incomprehensible to mind and thought, but not incomprehensible from compassion, kindness, and the power of vows. So when I say embodied, what I'm expressing here is that this understanding, this wisdom, can't just come through thought, pondering it, like Rodin's the great thinker, but it comes out of heart of kindness, compassion, and vows. The Bodhi resolve, for example, the vow to save all living beings. Then these states appear and one can enter them. So the entry point, the key to getting into this, isn't mind and thought. It doesn't mean you don't use it to a certain extent, but it means mind and thought are left behind when compassion and kindness and vows start to drive your machine, so to speak. And then it says, gradually, in this way, there is perfection of the mind. And then this line, wisdom's practices are not reflection's realm. Reflection means cogitation. And then the last verse of this passage, such states as these are difficult to perceive. They can only be known, not expressed. Only through a Buddha's power are they proclaimed. Receive them with all reverence. So this is working on this theme of the inconceivability and suggesting that there are ways that we see and understand and can know that are natural to us, but they're rusty. They're not developed. And by working through our own cultivation of precepts, concentration, and wisdom, getting rid of the klesha, this power, this muscle starts to work. And quickly compassion and kindness and vows start to replace intellectualization. They're actually superior vehicles for understanding. So those are the two meanings I would say. Seeing without distortion is basically the heart cleanse, the heart-mind cleanse, and so there's no cataracts, to use another example that's drawn from the Shurangama. I think one of the expressions that come to, some of you know the Heart Sutra, recite the Heart Sutra. When Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara was practicing cultivating the heart of wisdom, he or she illumined and saw. The five skandhas saw they're empty and got depressed. No, I just saw they're empty and crossed beyond all suffering and difficulty. So again, the positivity, saw emptiness and went, whoopee! And we see emptiness, we start taking meds. It's a very different, what did the Bodhisattva see there that was whoopee, cross beyond all suffering? But what I want to point to, Jiao Jian, those two words, when the Bodhisattva, Jiao Jian, illumined saw, illumined saw. Didn't just see with the ordinary eye, but saw with this wisdom eye, the inconceivable dharma eye, that is without distortion. So the Jiao Jin is a brilliant way of seeing that comes directly through self-cultivation and not through just cogitation. Anyhow, so I think that's what it means. And then you go to the next, do we have the next verse here? Let's see what that is. You see this last line here? 法言不思议时间非颠倒. 颠倒 means upside down. And that's translated as without distortion. Without 颠倒, without distortion, but without upside downness. And again, you see in the Heart Sutra, those of you who memorize it or know it, how many people have memorized the Heart Sutra? Whoa, do it, do it. Just do it, memorize it. Memorize in English, memorize in Chinese, recite it every day. It's incredible. It just works on your psyche, it works on your system. You take it in the morning, you go, whoa. Throughout the day, wow, whoa, whoa. Throughout the years. So I started back in, 74, 75. Every summer when I have quiet time in Maine, I come back to the Heart Sutra, and it just knocks me on the head, rubs me, and pushes me around, opens up, plays with me. It's like I keep opening in it, and it never exhausts its meaning. Go for it. And it's not long. Even in the age when our attention spans are less than goldfishes, which is where we're at now, I'm sorry. Goldfishes have longer attention spans than we do. Okay, I'm just telling you. So even that, you can memorize the Heart Sutra. It's not that long. It's really quite short. And it's got the essence of everything you need to know about the Dharma in it. Oh, and you just unpack it and you pack it. But it says when the Bodhisattva sees that things are empty, and then sees if they're empty, then there's nothing to get. And because there's nothing to obtain, the Bodhisattva has no impediment in the heart and mind, and without impediments, unafraid. And leaves Dian Dao Wangshang, distorted dream thinking, far behind. Wow, it's the same Dian Dao as here. So this is very interesting. And basically what it's saying is we're hanging upside down. I mean, it's a beautiful metaphor. We think we're right side up, but we're actually hanging upside down. And when we get right side up, we go, oh, everything's off, I'm dizzy. That's the first stage of awakening. But we're so used to being upside down, and then we're right side up, it seems strange. The parallel to this, of course, those of you who know Western philosophy, is Plato's cave. You can look at that. That's another night we do. Okay, so if we move on, I'm going to read this part here. Sorry for slowing down. Because that use of principle, using principle, the Li, this was a big theme of the third Avatamsaka Patriarch, Fazang. Some of you know about Fazang. He's the third Avatamsaka Huayan Patriarch, lived in the Tang Dynasty, roughly 643 to 712. I don't know how many years that is, about 69 or 69 years, 70 years. How's your math? Anybody? 643 to 712, how many years? Yeah, I see. I like people who are doing this instead of, that's good. What, 69 years, something like that? Okay. One of my colleagues, who may be listening tonight, sent me this week because he's working on Fazang. Fazang is just an incredible interpreter of the Avatamsaka Sutra. And if you really want to get deeply in Avatamsaka, look at either his work directly or translations of his work. But he says this about translating the Avatamsaka, in general about translating Buddhist texts. He says, on one hand, if you base yourself on principle, however you explain it, it works. On the other hand, if you base yourself on attachment, however you grasp it, you'll fall short. So what he's explaining is the importance of Li, of principle. You can interpret a passage of text in 100 different ways as long as it's according with Li principle. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. But if you're basing yourself on attachment, on greed and anger and grasping and ego and wanting to be famous or whatever, no matter how you come at it, you'll fall short. And then he goes on, another passage says, if your mind is empty and merges with principle and phenomena, you explain it. But if you're attached to words, then whatever you come up with becomes an obstruction. So this is very useful because we use this in our classes as Li for translation. So it's not simply enough that you have the dictionary definition, but you have to be able to connect these principles to not only the other text, but the real lived human experience. The real lived human experience. And so no matter how profound it is, even a child should be able to get something out of that. Maybe I'll just... Okay, I'll say a little bit about Fazang, because I think he's pretty cool. Fazang came from a place called Sogdia. Anybody know where Sogdia is? S-O-G-D-I-A? It's a wonderful vacation spot. No? It's along the Silk Road. It's actually close to Iran. Yeah, sort of the western regions of China. He was actually born in Chang'an, which is now what? Xi'an, right? He was born in Xi'an. But his family came from Sogdia. And so they had this Iranian background. Now, some of the interesting things, I'll just go to the interesting stuff here that keep you awake. Some of the biographies state, you can ponder this, that his mother became pregnant after dreaming of swallowing rays of sunshine. Now, see, I saw the heads go. Some heads are going, some heads are, yeah, right. Whatever you want to work with that, this is how it's stated. He apparently had abilities to use dharani, or secret school techniques. For example, when there was a drought threatening the capital area, the emperor commanded Fazang to perform a religious ritual. This has to do with a certain dharani. And he did. And after 7 days of doing this ritual, a heavy downpour came and lasted for 10 days in the capital, in that area around. So he, besides these extraordinary things, he was an incredible, brilliant scholar of the Huayan school. He's a key figure of the Chinese imperial court, very influential Buddhist philosopher, skill as a translator, and knowledge of Sanskrit. And he then produced a new translation of chapter 39, the Gandavyuha. And he worked on high tech at the time, which was what? Tang Dynasty tech? Going once, going twice. Nobody? Woodblock. Oh, woodblock. He worked on improving that. It's called xylography for those who are erudite, to print Buddhist text. In fact, he did a translation of that text I just quoted you, Dreams, Illusions, Bubbles, Shadows, called the Vajra, the Diamond Sutra. That, some of you may or may not know, was the first printed text in the world. And Fazang did a translation of that in 704, very early on. Anyhow, I guess I could go a number of directions here. Let's see. I have a poem. I don't know if I have time. I'll tell you a rain story. So I told you about Fazang. He used a dharani. What's a dharani? Anybody know? Mantra. Another word for mantra. Yeah, it's mantras. And there's all kinds of dharanis and mantras. Any of you memorized any dharanis? I'm pushing the memorization tonight. And the reason I'm doing this is I'm trying to get you to unplug digital devices and plug into the natural mind, which is activated through memorization. Not memorizing your codes and your passwords and things like this, but memorizing something that's worth eating. Heart Sutra? Good. How about some dharanis? Where would you start? You could do the single one, Om. I can do that. What was it again? Om. Memorize Om, and that's again Namo. How about the Great Compassion Mantra? That's doable. And you could test how good your mind has been taken care of. Not how good it is, but how good it's taken care of by seeing how long it takes you to memorize the Great Compassion Mantra. So you go home tonight, find a copy, and start memorizing it. And the longer it takes, the more your mind has been neglected and overgrown with weeds. No doctor's going to take this for you, but you can test yourself in this way. I imagine someone like Fa Zhang would probably do it in 10 minutes. Some of us might do 10 days. Some might do 10 years. Some might do 10 lifetimes. Whatever, don't quit. Just stay with it. Because as you do this, the Dharani's influence kind of saturates you. And the power of the Dharani goes out to benefit the world. So it's really a very powerful, cleansing, clarifying, and it's not words and thought. You don't even have to understand what is the meaning here, because the meanings are, these are syllables. The meanings are not necessarily things you think about. In any event, to tell you the story, so Fa Zhang does this Dharani, causes rain. So back in 75, 76, around that, we were at Gold Mountain Monastery, and those years were drought years in California, right through 77, and serious drought, 3 or 4 years of drought in a row. And it was really affecting crops and people and water supply. And I remember at Gold Mountain, the master said, you know, we should do something to try to help the world. We should help elicit some rain. I was like, well, okay, how? And so he said, I want you all to sincerely recite the Great Compassion Mantra, Dharani, the Great Compassion Dharani. And he said, not only should you recite it, you should go to Golden Gate Park, take an image of Guanyin Bodhisattva, put it out there on an altar that you make with a little incense and flowers and everything, and all you should go out and circumambulate reciting the Great Compassion Mantra for the whole afternoon at Golden Gate Park, with the idea that the Bodhisattva compassion will have compassion on living beings who have brought these conditions of drought and disasters upon themselves through their lack of compassion, and mercifully help the rainfall. So we eagerly, naively, whatever, went out, the monks and nuns, and we were going, and we all had recitation beads, and someone was hitting the fish. Pretty soon, you know, kids started, what's going on? People picnicking in, and bikers came out, what the heck? Finally, as we went on the day, a news team came out from the local news channel and said, what is this? We heard that something was going on in the park. And of course, it's like camera ready. It's very active camera. So they're running the cameras, and one of the nuns explained, well, we're reciting the Great Compassion Mantra because we're hoping to, by doing this, we'll evoke the Bodhisattva Great Compassion to bring rain to this area, this drought-stricken area. And the comparator went, right. And said, okay, well, we do need it. And who knows, we've been trying all sorts of things and nothing's working. So, and then that went on. So at the 6 o'clock news that night, I went home and I turned on the 6 o'clock news, and there was a reporter, and I could see myself and everybody else. Of course, there's me. Everybody's reciting, and the reporter saying, here we are at Golden Gate Park. These Buddhists from Gold Mountain Monastery are out here reciting and praying for rain, and who knows? Ha, ha, ha. And then they went to the weather report, you know, nothing, blah, blah, blah. And so I thought, oh, okay, maybe it didn't happen. Now, I went to bed, usually go to bed 8:30, 9 at the latest, because I was getting up at 4:30 or 5 at that time, and there was no rain. I thought, well, we gave it a good shot. So right around, I don't know, it must have been 9:30 or something, I hear thunder. And I hear, and I thought, wow, I'm having a dream of rain. This is cool. And then I wake up and it's raining. It's really raining. And so I go to the TV and I turn on the 10 o'clock news, and it's the same reporter. She says, earlier in the show clip, I was out here on this field dry, standing here with these Buddhists who are praying for rain. She says, now it's 10 o'clock at night, and I'm standing here in water up to my ankles. And she's got a rubber coat on the boots and everything, and the rain's coming down, and she says, wonders never cease. And then just left it at that, but accrediting as much as one could the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So what I'm saying is, you hear this about Fa Zhang back in the Tang Dynasty, and you think, well, these are ancient myths and so forth. But I can at least say, we did that. I don't know that it was our power, but the power of the Dharani somehow, the sincerity of that, does impact more than just the mind. It can impact the whole natural world. Now, maybe you could say the reason it did is for 2 or 3 hours while you were doing that, your minds were calm and you weren't putting out negative energy. And maybe that's all that you could accomplish by doing a Dharani. But that's a lot. That's a lot. If you stop broadcasting the negativity, even quietly in your mind, and just change it to something else, interesting things can happen. I'll stop there for tonight. Jeez, I'm going to 2 verses and thought that's not going to be enough. Well, we didn't even get to the second verse. And I had a poem I was going to read you, and I'm not going to have time to do that. I'll do that next week. These are poems I want to share with you, though. These are called river and mountain poems from the Chinese literary tradition. Rivers and mountain poems. And basically, the back says, these poems articulate the experience of living in an organic part of the natural world and its processes. And then this important line. And in an age of global ecological disruption and mass extinction, this tradition grows more urgently important to the day. So what I'm trying to do here, on one hand, I'm trying to take the light and the wisdom and the goodness of the Avatamsaka Sutra and put it out into the air, so to speak, into our minds and our hearts, and let those sounds have a cleansing effect, straighten us in different ways, to really nurture us. But I also like to use this nature poetry called the Rivers and the Mountains poetry to do the other touchstone, which is the natural world, and which is one of the reasons why we have Redwood Vihara, is to allow people to go deep back into the redwoods of the Santa Cruz Mountains and get in touch with this organic natural world of themselves and nature together. So these 2 points, I think, if we're going to really seriously change the situation in the world, and it desperately needs changing, you couldn't do a better job than every weekend coming and listening to this text. Not necessarily my explanations, just the text proper. And let that wash over you. And as much as you can, get away from the devices and get back in nature. Now, Thoreau said the wildness of nature doesn't have to be the wilderness. It can be your backyard. It can be a tree or garden in your backyard. That's wildness. That's what he meant by wildness. He didn't mean the natural parks. But if you can do that, get to the ocean, get to the mountains, just sit in your backyard, unplug, get outside, even on a porch. Do that with the Avatamsaka. This is a wonderful gift to yourself and to the world. It really is. And it's not fast, it's not quick. But over time, you'll find a fullness returning, the fullness of your true self starting to return in this process. And it's not hard. Now, the third element, if you want to memorize something, that will really quicken it. So memorize the Heart Sutra or memorize the Great Compassion. You say, I did the Great Compassion. Well, then do the Shrangama mantra. Well, I did the Shrangama. Then do the Shrangama Sutra. Oh, okay. Just keep upping the challenge to yourself. Really, all the garbage that goes through our minds, moment to moment, thought to thought, none of it is worth keeping. But letting your mind, letting these rivers of Dharanis and things flow through your mind, they really cleanse the heart, they cleanse the mind. Very worthwhile. Anyhow, I'll close there. We'll pick up again next week and finish the second verse, right? Now you see why I said we'll never get to the 10 grounds.
Okay. Glad to see all of you after the break, and it was not a really break for us in many ways. There's a lot of Dharma activities and events. I also received pretty direct Dharma teaching, and last May, I think in the end of May, in Georgia's Buddhist summer camp, want to pass the thank you card to Jin Chuanshi. One unmindful step. Spent next 3 months on in the cast with the crutches, with the boot, and still kind of recovering from that. So definitely was a teaching of impermanence and changing. But I want to share today with you something what's really kind of touch my heart and uplift us. Marty mentioned about Redwood Vihara, our forest monastery in Santa Cruz Mountains. And we have a very special event. A month ago, Ajahn Pasano, Ajahn Karunadamo, both senior monks from Thai forest tradition, came to welcome relics of Ajahn Chah in our place. It's truly inconceivable, we can say, in many ways. And to give a context, probably you heard that our tradition, the Northern tradition, has a lot of similarity and a lot of cooperation, coexistence, and friendship with Southern tradition, the Theravada. And it's happened because Master Hua has a vision, actually, he shared that he says that only that Northern tradition going too far to north, the Southern tradition go too far to south, they need to meet in the middle. And this is only when this happened, the Buddhism has a future. And when he met Master Hua, I think it was late 70s, Ajahn Sumedho, one of the first pioneers, the American monk who was trained under Ajahn Chah in the north and east part of Thailand, he saw, he had a feeling that this wish can flourish, can be embodied. And I think Ajahn Sumedho at the time was younger than me. It was kind of quite amazing to see this interaction. I think Marty definitely witnessed all these exchanges between these two traditions. But I want to share with you, so the last May in Amaravati Monastery in England was a big gathering, all the senior monastics of Ajahn Chah lineage. Celebration of Ajahn Sumedho's 90th birthday. And who came also to join this event was Joseph Kappel, former Ajahn Pabakro, one of assistants of Ajahn Chah, who served him in the last years. And he brings with him very treasure thing what he had. He discovered actually suddenly in his altar Ajahn Chah's hairs. And they were divided to very small pieces. They bring some special sharira, the relics containers from Thailand, and all monks who gather, and nuns and lay people, receive the one small Ajahn Chah kind of relics. And what's happened in this ceremony, our good friend Tan Isaro, who have the same accent like me from Poland, ordained in Thai forest tradition, when he received those relics, in his heart immediately comes out, I want to offer this to Redwood Vihara. And later we received, talking about inconceivable things, another our friend Ajahn Nisabo from Clear Mountain Monastery, when Ajahn Kovila, one of Deerview graduates, they're creating a community in Seattle, was there in England, moved this to Seattle, from Seattle came to Abhayagiri, and we received this in the end of the Guanyin session. But it's also talking about inconceivable. I know from Tanisaro, he says when he was a layman in Poland, he discovered on one of the websites Polish translation of Shurangama Sutra of Master Hua's commentary. Deeply touched his heart. Later led him to leaving home, like he found out, and Amaravati was the place he wanted to trust because Master Hua was there and has a lot of appreciation for the Southern tradition. And later, in a conceivable way, he had those relics pass on. And the last month, Ajahn Pasano kind of welcomed them to Redwood Vihara. It was very kind of touching moment, really kind of inconceivable in many ways. How this happened? How we can plan this kind of things? In the Dharma realm, I think when things planted with goodness have an inconceivable effect, kind of a ripple effect. It kind of reflecting and very inspiring how these ripples travel from one generation to another, how this friendship inconceivably show up in the very unexpected way. And in the end, it was very moving. Also, Ajahn Pasano, who was, was ordained by Ajahn Chah, trained by him, he has a very deep respect to the relics. We even chant as in Pali, a special chant. But he kind of approached this whole relics phenomena in the way this is, okay, there are a lot of magical things happening around those inconceivable things. But he says the most important is this is a reminder of cultivated, like we say, Marty says, principles, apply, embodied, and give a birth of fruits of a peace and happiness and liberation. And it's kind of inconceivable how those seeds can ripple out and manifest in different times in our lives. And there's a kind of constant reminder that this teaching can be applied here and now by all of us, and all of us can benefit from it. So when you wish to see these relics, please come to Redwood Vihara, and if you have opportunity. And so it was a very inconceivable event when we want to share with you about that. So it's definitely kind of something shifting in our field. We have a few announcements. What's going to happen tomorrow? I think Monk Heng Sure cannot lecture. We'll have a replacement. I think Dharma Master Yong will lecture. He's in Singapore right now. He's lecturing. And next Sunday, James Barras and Insight Meditation Community will have a half-day dialogue here in BBM. You can find all information on our website. And Marty class is now every Friday, right? We have your presence and hopefully your presence, and we'll see what inconceivable things will come out from that.
It's called the turtle approach to the Avatamsaka.
Working day, okay, October 6th. Any of you want to join or want to be on the mailing list, please let us know. We can send you can directly visit the Redwood Forest, our monastery, and we have some places or space for meditation, for contemplation, sharing, and lunch as well.
So one last announcement. When I was explaining earlier, the Avatamsaka describes the mind as having no place, no location. It universally pervades, and this is the heart of consciousness. We think of it as our brain or something limited like that, but actually it's vastly more interconnected and wider than that. We just have limited access to its full functioning. That being said, one of the rituals that we do in Buddhism is to consciously and intentionally transfer merit, transfer goodness, transfer ideas of wholesomeness and caring out. Now, we do that consciously, but it's happening all the time, even when we don't consciously do it. So whatever we're radiating goes out, okay? This is not like it's limited to our little skin bag. But part of the transference idea is to intentionally take thoughts of goodness or take experiences where there's been goodness and virtue and wish that it could be spread and shared. So I say that tonight because we always end by saying, may the merit of the Dites gathering go out and benefit. And we do it universally to all living beings without limit. But tonight I would ask also that within that universal, there's a particular in that one of our graduates from the DRB program passed away last night. And I would ask you to include her in your thoughts as we do the transference tonight. Kathleen, some of you know Kathleen. And in a way, this keeps us connected with her and expresses our connection, but also in a way she is reminding us how important it is to carpe diem, to seize the moment. Kathleen wasn't old, and breast cancer metastasized very quickly, and that was it. So I say this with all due respect and care. Each of us is in the crosshairs of this at one point or another. So I was saying to do the Avatamsaka, get close to nature, memorize. I wasn't just saying this as a sort of thing you might think about doing, but to take really seriously as to how much time there's available to you to fill it with these kinds of energies. And you won't regret then at that moment when inevitability calls that your life was wasted. As Wei Nung reminds us, a frantic, busy, unexamined life ends in bitter regret. And the opposite is quite true. So tonight we're going to transfer universally, but also if you would keep in your hearts, Kathleen.
Okay, so I can face down to the altar. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of painters into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Bowing respect to the triple jewels.
November 29th, 6:30 a.m. We'll be reciting Great Compassion Mantra here at BBM and also online. So you can tune in for that. Okay?
It also has the added benefit of protecting you. So next
Yeah,
time we
protects
meet,
you.
I'll tell you more stories about how Heng Sure and I used to use the Great Compassion Mantra basically as our spiritual, physical bodyguards. So those of you who need protection, you should think maybe including that in your HMO.
Definitely won't hurt.